Episode 3, Bridges and Barriers. Previously on Roots and Reminiscence. After discovering a mysterious letter from her deceased husband, John, Evelyn Parker uncovered the shocking truth that he had been married before and had abandoned a wife and infant daughter 50 years ago. The family welcomed Catherine, John's first daughter, who revealed that her son James wanted to meet his newfound relatives. Michael initially struggled with anger over his father's deception, but through discovering more of John's hidden letters and learning that Eleanor had actually sent John away out of love, the family found understanding and forgiveness. Now, as they prepare for James's wedding, new challenges test their growing bonds. Chapter 1, Anna's Crossroads. Anna Parker sat in the campus coffee shop, staring at the acceptance letter that had arrived 3 days ago. The header read, Graduate School of Education, Columbia University, and the words, "We are pleased to offer you." Admission seemed to shimmer on the page like a mirage. 6 months ago, this letter would have represented the culmination of all her dreams. A master's program in educational psychology at one of the country's most prestigious universities. A chance to follow in her grandmother's footsteps, but with modern research and methodology. The opportunity to make a real difference in children's lives. But 6 months ago, her family had been smaller, simpler, contained within the boundaries of what she'd thought she knew about their history. Now everything was different. Catherine had become a regular presence in their lives, calling weekly to share stories about her teaching career and ask about Anna's studies. James had evolved from a stranger to a cousin she genuinely cared about, someone whose wedding she was helping to plan. The family had expanded in ways that felt both natural and miraculous. And leaving for New York would mean missing so much of this new chapter. "You look like someone just told you Christmas was cancelled," her roommate Katie observed, sliding into the opposite chair with her own coffee. Anna held up the letter. "Columbia accepted me." "Anna, that's amazing. You've been working toward this for 2 years. Why do you look like it's bad news?" How could she explain the complexity of her feelings? That success could feel like betrayal, when it meant leaving behind people who had just found their way into your life. That dreams could change shape so completely that achieving them felt like a mistake? "It's complicated," Anna said finally. "Family stuff?" Anna nodded. Katie knew about the recent revelations regarding her grandfather's past, though Anna had shared only the basics. Her roommate had been fascinated by the story, calling it like something out of a movie, but for Anna it was lived reality, messy and ongoing. "My cousin James is getting married in 2 months. His fiancée Sarah asked me to be in the wedding party. And my Aunt Catherine, God, it's still weird to say that she's been talking about maybe moving closer to us when she retires next year. So you're thinking of staying because of family obligations?" "Not obligations, opportunities." Anna folded the letter carefully, creasing it along lines that were already becoming worn from repeated handling. "Katie, 3 months ago I thought I understood my family completely. Now I'm discovering that love is more complicated and more resilient than I ever imagined. How do I walk away from that to study it in books?" "Maybe you don't have to choose," Katie suggested. "Columbia has deferrals, right? You could ask for a year to get your family situation sorted out." Anna had considered that possibility, but it felt like procrastination rather than decision-making. If she deferred now, would she ever feel ready to leave? Or would there always be another family milestone, another reason to stay close to home? Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Are you free this afternoon? I'm driving up to help with wedding planning, and I'd love your input on flowers." Anna smiled despite her inner turmoil. Catherine's energy about the wedding was infectious. Her joy at being able to participate in her son's life after decades of distance. How could Anna explain that she might not be able to participate fully? Because of graduate school timing? She texted back, "Absolutely. Can't wait to see you. You're going to figure this out," Katie said, reading Anna's expression. "But can I make a suggestion?" "Of course. Talk to your family about it. Really talk to them. Don't make assumptions about what they need from you or what they expect. They might surprise you." As Anna walked across campus to her next class, she thought about Katie's advice. Her family had certainly surprised her recently with their capacity for forgiveness. Their willingness to embrace new connections. Their ability to find joy even in the midst of complicated revelations. Maybe they would surprise her again. Chapter 2: Catherine's Journey. Catherine Hartwell stood in the parking lot of the Norfolk Public Library, her hands trembling slightly as she stared at the building, where she had spent countless hours as a child. 55 years had passed since she'd lived in this city. But the red brick facade and tall windows looked exactly as she remembered. She had driven down to Virginia Beach, ostensibly to handle some details related to her mother's estate. Eleanor had left some papers with Margaret that needed Catherine's signature. But the real reason for the trip was more complicated. She wanted to see the places where her earliest life had unfolded, to understand the geography of the family she'd never known she'd lost. The house where she'd been born was only 6 blocks away. Margaret had offered to accompany her, but Catherine had declined. This pilgrimage felt like something she needed to do alone. A conversation between her adult self and the baby, who had been loved and protected and ultimately separated from her birth father. She walked through downtown Norfolk, noting the changes that 5 decades had brought. The shipyard where John Daniel Morrison had worked was still there, though modernized beyond recognition. The church where her parents had been married was now a community center. The small apartment where they had lived as a family of 3 was part of a renovated historic district, probably worth 10 times what John and Eleanor had paid for it. Finally, she stood in front of 247 Elm Street. A modest 2-story house with a front porch and a large oak tree in the yard. A young family lived there now. She could see children's toys scattered on the lawn and hear the sound of laughter from the backyard. This was where she had taken her first steps, spoken her first words. Been held and fed and loved by 2 parents who were trying to figure out how to be happy while trapped in roles that didn't fit their true selves. A woman emerged from the house, probably in her 30s, carrying a toddler on her hip. She noticed Catherine standing on the sidewalk, and approached with the friendly curiosity of someone comfortable in their neighborhood. "Can I help you with something?" Catherine smiled, suddenly feeling foolish. "I'm sorry for staring. I used to live in this house, many years ago. I was just remembering." "How wonderful. When did you live here?" 1953 to 1954. "I was just a baby then." The woman's eyes lit up with interest. "You're kidding? We found some old things when we renovated the basement. Letters and photographs that the previous owners must have left behind. Would you like to see them?" Catherine felt her heart skip. "That would be incredible, if it's not too much trouble." "No trouble at all. I'm Susan, by the way. This is my daughter Emma." "Catherine. And your daughter is beautiful." Susan invited Catherine inside, and the familiarity of the layout hit her immediately. The living room where her parents had tried to make conversation after long days of work. The kitchen where Eleanor had heated bottles, and John had read the morning paper. The stairs where her father had carried her up to bed every night. Until the night he left forever. "The things we found are in here," Susan said, leading Catherine to a small room that had probably been John's study. She pulled out a shoebox filled with papers. Most of it looked like old bills and documents. But there were some photographs too. Catherine's hands shook as she lifted the lid. Inside were utility bills from 1953, a few business cards. And her breath caught a small stack of photographs she had never seen. Pictures of John holding a baby who could only be Catherine. Pictures of Eleanor and John together, looking young and hopeful despite the troubles Catherine now knew they were facing. And at the bottom, a photograph that made her gasp out loud. It showed John kneeling beside a small garden bed in what must have been the backyard, pointing to something in the soil, while baby Catherine sat nearby in a wooden high chair. On the back, in John's careful handwriting, teaching Catherine about growing things, May 1953. That must be you, Susan said softly, looking over Catherine's shoulder. Catherine nodded, unable to speak. Her father had been teaching her about gardens, about growing things, about nurturing life from soil and seed. It was a perfect metaphor for what he'd been trying to do with his own life plant. Something good in the broken ground of his past mistakes. Would you like to see the backyard? Susan offered. I don't know if any of that garden is still there, but you're welcome to look. The backyard had been completely transformed, landscaped and modernized, with a deck and swing set that spoke of a family comfortable with their life and place. But against the back fence, Catherine could see the remnants of what might have been John's original garden. A few elderly rose bushes that still bloomed despite decades of neglect. Those roses have been here forever, Susan said, following Catherine's gaze. We've been meaning to do something with them. But they're so beautiful in the spring that we can't bear to tear them out. Catherine walked over to the roses, touching the thorny stems with wonder. These plants might have been tended by her father's hands. The roses at Evelyn's house weren't the first garden John had planted for the women he loved. They were the continuation of something he'd started here, with Eleanor, when he'd still been trying to make their marriage work. Susan, Catherine said suddenly, would it be possible for me to take a cutting from one of these roses? I'd like to plant it in my garden at home. Of course. Take as many as you want. And please, keep those photographs. They belong with you, not in our basement. As Catherine carefully cut several stems from the roses, wrapping them in damp paper towels for the drive home, she felt a sense of completion she hadn't expected. She was literally carrying part of her father's first garden to her current life. Bridging the decades between John Daniel Morrison and John David Parker. Chapter 3: Wedding Plans and Revelations. 2 days later, Catherine arrived at Evelyn's house, carrying a cooler with the rose cuttings and a heart full of stories about her trip to Norfolk. She found the kitchen bustling with wedding planning. Activity fabric samples spread across the table, catalogs opened to flower arrangements, and Anna taking notes on a legal pad. Aunt Catherine. Anna jumped up to hug her. And Catherine marveled again at how naturally the title had evolved. How was your trip? Emotional but wonderful. I brought something for your grandmother's garden. Catherine explained about finding the roses and shared the photographs Susan had given her. Evelyn examined the pictures with tears in her eyes. Look how young he was. And Catherine, you were such a beautiful baby. He was teaching me about gardening. Catherine said, showing them the photograph of John and baby Catherine by the garden bed. Even then, he was trying to plant things that would grow and flourish. Anna looked up from her notepad. That's so beautiful. And perfect timing, actually. James and Sarah want to incorporate something meaningful into their wedding ceremony. What if we used roses from both gardens, the ones from Norfolk and the ones from Grandpa's garden here? Something that represents both parts of his life coming together? I love that idea, Catherine said immediately. But are you sure the cuttings will take root in time for the wedding? Evelyn smiled. Your father had a gift with plants. If these roses have survived 50 years of neglect, they'll probably root faster than we expect. Besides, even if they don't bloom for the wedding, we can use roses from the garden here, and save the Norfolk cuttings for the reception or the rehearsal dinner. They spent the afternoon working on wedding details, but Catherine noticed that Anna seemed distracted. When Evelyn went to answer the phone, Catherine seized the opportunity to ask what was troubling her niece. Is everything okay, Anna? You seem worried about something. Anna set down her pen and sighed. I got accepted to graduate school at Columbia. It's everything I thought I wanted, but the timing is terrible. The program starts just 2 weeks after James's wedding. And I'd have to move to New York right away. But that's wonderful news, isn't it? It should be. But Aunt Catherine, I've spent the last 3 months discovering family. I never knew I had. James feels like the brother I never had, and you've become. Well, you've become so important to me. How can I leave right when we're all getting to know each other? Catherine studied Anna's face, seeing the genuine conflict there. Anna, can I tell you something about your grandfather that you might not know? Of course. When he left Norfolk, he was your age, young, smart. Full of potential but trapped by circumstances that seemed impossible to navigate. He made the choice to prioritize safety over dreams, staying close to home instead of pursuing what might have made him truly happy. Anna frowned. Are you saying he made the wrong choice? I'm saying he made the only choice he thought he could make at the time. But Anna, he spent the rest of his life wondering what might have been different if he'd been brave enough to pursue his dreams instead of hiding from them. But if he'd stayed in Norfolk, he never would have met Grandma. Never would have had Dad and Aunt Sarah, never would have become the man we all loved. Exactly, Catherine said gently. Sometimes the choices that feel like betrayals in the moment turn out to be the ones that lead us to where we're supposed to be. Your grandfather learned that you can love your family and still pursue your own path. In fact, becoming the person you're meant to be might be the greatest gift you can give to the people who love you. Anna was quiet for a moment, absorbing this perspective. But what if I go to New York and our family falls apart while I'm gone? What if you and James decide you don't need connections to us after all? Catherine reached across the table and took Anna's hand. Sweetheart, family isn't something you can lose by pursuing your dreams. If anything, watching you succeed will make us all prouder to be connected to you. And besides, she smiled, New York isn't the moon. You can come home for holidays, summers, important family events. What if I change while I'm there? What if I become someone different? Then we'll love whoever you become, just like we love who you are now. Anna, your grandfather spent 50 years trying to balance love for his family with regret over roads not taken. Don't make the same mistake. Evelyn returned to the kitchen, immediately sensing the emotional intensity of the conversation. What did I miss? Anna got accepted to Columbia, Catherine explained. She's worried about leaving the family right when we're all getting to know each other. Evelyn sat down and looked at her granddaughter with the wisdom of 7 decades. Anna, do you remember what your grandfather's workshop taught us? That secrets can be more harmful than truth? That love isn't diminished by distance or time. Your grandfather loved Catherine for 50 years, without being able to tell her so directly. Our love for you isn't going to disappear because you're in a different city pursuing your education. But the timing is perfect, Evelyn interrupted firmly. You'll be at James's wedding, which will give you a chance to celebrate his new beginning before you start your own. And then you'll go to New York, carrying all the stories and love and family history we've discovered together. You'll be our ambassador to the world, Anna. Our proof that this family produces strong, smart, successful women who can make a difference. Anna felt tears prickling her eyes. Are you sure? Are you really sure you'll be okay if I go? We'll be more than okay, Catherine said. We'll be proud. And Anna, if your grandfather's story has taught us anything, it's that families can survive separation and even thrive because of it. You pursuing your dreams doesn't break our connections, it strengthens them by showing that we've raised someone brave enough to reach for what she wants. That same afternoon, Michael was dealing with his own crossroads. He sat in his office, reviewing a contract that should have been straightforward but felt impossibly complicated. The Hendersons, the couple going through a messy divorce, had finally agreed to sell their house. But now they were fighting over every detail of the transaction. "She wants to keep the garden shed," Tom Henderson said, his voice tight with frustration. "We're getting divorced, we're selling the house. But she wants to keep a shed that's attached to the foundation." "It has sentimental value," his wife Janet shot back. "My father built that shed with his own hands. I'm not leaving it for strangers to tear down." Michael found himself thinking about his father's workshop. About all the meaningful things that could be hidden in places that looked ordinary to everyone else. "Mrs. Henderson, is there a way to preserve what's meaningful about the shed without taking the actual structure?" "What do you mean?" "Photos, maybe. Or some of the wood, if your father used special materials. A way to honor the memory without complicating the sale." Janet Henderson looked surprised by the suggestion. I never thought of that. I suppose I could ask my brother to help me remove some of the original planks. The ones with Dad's initials carved in them." Michael spent the next hour helping the Hendersons navigate the emotional landscape of separating a shared life, trying to find solutions that honored their feelings without sabotaging their practical needs. It was delicate work, requiring patience and creativity, and a willingness to see past the anger to the hurt underneath. When they finally left, with a plan that satisfied both parties, Michael realized he'd been having a conversation with himself as much as with his clients. How do you preserve what matters while still moving forward? How do you honor the past without being trapped by it? His phone rang. Anna's name on the caller ID. "Hi, sweetheart. How's the wedding planning going?" "Good, but Dad, I need to talk to you about something. I got accepted to Columbia." Michael felt a surge of pride followed immediately by a stab of loss. "Anna, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. But the timing is really difficult. I'd have to leave right after James's wedding. And I'm worried about leaving everyone right when our family is expanding." Michael leaned back in his chair, thinking about his conversation with the Hendersons. About the difficulty of letting go of things that mattered. "Anna, what do you want to do? Not what you think you should do, not what you think we expect. But what you actually want." "I want to go to Columbia. I want to study educational psychology and learn how to help kids who are struggling. But I also want to be here for James's wedding and Catherine's transition and all the family stuff that's happening." "And you don't think you can have both?" "Not the way I imagined. I thought I'd be here to help Catherine get settled if she moves closer. I thought I'd be around to get to know James better, to be a real part of his life." Michael stood up and walked to his office window, looking out at the town where he'd spent his entire life. "Anna, can I tell you something I've been thinking about since we learned about your grandfather's past?" "Of course. I think one of the reasons he kept his first family secret was because he was afraid that loving them would somehow diminish his love for us. He thought love was finite, that you had to choose between caring about people in different places or times. But that's not true. No, it's not. And you pursuing your dreams in New York doesn't mean you love this family less. It means you're confident enough in our love to build on it. To become someone who can contribute even more to the people you care about. What if I get there and realize I've made a mistake? Then you'll come home, and we'll figure out what's next together. Anna, your grandmother taught school for 40 years. But she also took summers off to travel and learn new things. Your Aunt Catherine became a teacher too. But she also raised children and pursued her own interests. Following your dreams doesn't mean abandoning your family, it means adding to who you are so you have more to give." Anna was quiet for a moment. "You really think I should go?" "I think you should stop asking other people what you should do and start trusting yourself to know what's right." But Anna, if you want my opinion, I think Columbia would be lucky to have you. And I think your grandfather would be proud that his granddaughter is brave enough to pursue opportunities he never felt he could take. After they hung up, Michael sat in his office thinking about the conversation. His daughter was facing the same choice his father had faced 50 years ago, whether to prioritize security or dreams, whether to stay close to home or venture into unknown territory. But Anna had something John Daniel Morrison hadn't: a family that would support her choices rather than constrain them. She could leave for New York knowing that home would still be here when she needed it. That love wasn't conditional on geography or proximity. His phone buzzed with a text: "Dad, I just called Columbia and accepted. Thank you for helping me. Remember that I can love my family and still chase my dreams." Michael smiled, typing back, "Congratulations, sweetheart. Your grandfather would be so proud." Chapter 5: The Dress Fitting. The following Saturday, Catherine, Evelyn, and Anna drove to Richmond for Sarah's final dress fitting. The bridal shop was elegant but not pretentious, filled with the kind of soft lighting that made everyone look beautiful, and the kind of gentle efficiency that suggested experience with emotional brides and nervous families. Sarah emerged from the fitting room in her wedding dress, and Catherine felt her breath catch. The dress was simple and classic, with delicate lace sleeves and a skirt that moved like water when Sarah walked. But what struck Catherine most was the expression on Sarah's face: pure joy, uncomplicated by doubt or fear. "You look beautiful," Anna said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "James is going to lose his mind when he sees you." "I hope so," Sarah laughed. "Though knowing James, he'll probably have some engineering comment about the structural integrity of the bustle." Catherine smiled at this insight into her future daughter-in-law's personality. Sarah had quickly become one of her favorite people: smart, funny, kind, and clearly devoted to James in a way that reminded Catherine of the best marriages she'd observed over the years. "Catherine," Sarah said suddenly, "I wanted to ask you something. James and I have been talking about the ceremony, and we'd love for you to do a reading. Something about family, about love overcoming obstacles. Would you be comfortable with that?" Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. "I would be honored. Do you have something specific in mind?" "Actually, we were hoping you might choose something yourself. You've experienced love in so many forms: as a daughter, a mother, a teacher, a friend. We trust your judgment about what would be meaningful." As Sarah turned back to the mirror to examine the dress hem, Evelyn moved closer to Catherine. "That's quite an honor," she said quietly. "It feels like a responsibility," Catherine admitted. "What do you say to a young couple about love, when your own experience has been so complicated?" "You tell them the truth," Anna suggested, overhearing. "That love isn't always easy or straightforward, but it's always worth fighting for." The seamstress finished her adjustments, and Sarah changed back into her regular clothes. As they prepared to leave, she pulled Catherine aside. "I hope this isn't inappropriate to ask, but James told me about your parents' marriage, about how your father left. I wanted you to know that I don't think less of him for that choice." Catherine was surprised by the comment. "Why would you think less of him?" "Some people might see abandoning a family as a character flaw, something that would make them worry about inherited traits." Catherine studied Sarah's face, seeing genuine thoughtfulness there. "And you don't worry about that?" "No, because I've met James. I've seen how he treats people, how he thinks about responsibility and commitment. Whatever his biological father's struggles were, they didn't prevent James from becoming an incredibly good man." "What if they had?" Catherine asked, curious about how Sarah had processed the family revelations. What if learning about John's past had revealed negative traits in James? Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. Then I guess we would have dealt with them together. But Catherine, I think we are who we choose to be, not who our parents were. James chooses kindness, loyalty, integrity every day. That's not something he inherited, it's something he's decided to be. As they drove home, Catherine found herself thinking about Sarah's perspective. The young woman had managed to see John's story, not as a cautionary tale about inherited flaws, but as evidence that people could transcend their origins through conscious choice. She's wise, Evelyn observed, as if reading Catherine's thoughts. Very wise. James is lucky to have found someone who understands that love isn't about perfection, it's about choosing each other despite imperfections. Speaking of which, Anna said from the backseat, I have news. I called Columbia yesterday and confirmed my acceptance. I'm going to New York. Catherine turned in her seat to look at her niece. Anna, that's wonderful. How are you feeling about it? Excited, terrified, grateful, sad, pretty much every emotion at once. That sounds exactly right, Evelyn said. Big changes should feel complicated. If they don't, you're probably not paying attention. Will you help me pick out something to wear to the wedding? Anna asked Catherine. I want to look like I belong in this family. Sweetheart, Catherine said gently, you already belong in this family. You have since the day you were born. But yes, I'd love to help you find something beautiful to wear. Chapter 6: The Bachelor Party Truth. While the women were shopping for wedding attire, Michael was hosting James's bachelor party at his house, a decidedly low-key affair involving grilled burgers, beer, and a small group of James's college friends who had driven in for the wedding weekend. Michael had been nervous about hosting the event, unsure how to navigate the relationship with a nephew he was still getting to know. But as the evening progressed, he found himself genuinely enjoying James's company, and that of his friends, all engineers and technical types who shared James's thoughtful approach to life. So Michael, one of James's friends, said as they sat on the back deck, watching the sunset, what was it like finding out you had a nephew you never knew about? Surreal, Michael admitted, and wonderful. Though it's made me question how well we ever really know the people closest to us. James nodded thoughtfully. I've been thinking about that too. Growing up, I always felt like there was something missing, some piece of my identity that I couldn't quite grasp. Now I understand what it was I was missing: half my family history. Do you feel like that's changed you? Learning about your biological father? Not changed, exactly. But completed, maybe? Like I finally understand why I am the way I am. James took a sip of his beer. For instance, I've always been obsessive about finishing projects, about following through on commitments. I used to think it was just my personality. But now I wonder if it's partly a reaction to having a father who left things unfinished. Michael found this insight fascinating. You think you're compensating for his choices? Maybe. Or maybe I inherited both his tendency to run away from difficult situations and his desire to do better. So I consciously choose to stay, to work through problems, instead of escaping them. Is that why you're marrying Sarah? James laughed. I'm marrying Sarah because she's the most amazing woman I've ever met. But I think understanding my father's story has made me more intentional about the choice. I'm not just stumbling into marriage because it's expected. I'm choosing it because I want to build something lasting and beautiful with someone I love completely. One of the other friends raised his beer in a mock toast to intentional choices and beautiful women. As the laughter died down, James turned to Michael with a more serious expression. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. What was he like as a father? I know what Mom has told me, and I've read his letters. But I want to know what it was like to actually live with him day to day. Michael thought carefully about how to answer. He was present. That's the word that best describes it. When he was with you, you had his complete attention. He listened to everything we said. like it was the most important thing in the world. Was he ever impatient? Angry? Human? Oh, absolutely. He had a temper when things weren't going well at work. And he could be stubborn about the strangest things. He once spent 3 weeks building a birdhouse. Because he was convinced the design in the magazine was wrong. James smiled. That sounds like something I would do. He also worried constantly about whether he was being a good enough father. I remember him asking my mom if she thought he was too strict, too lenient. Too involved, not involved enough. It was like he was always afraid of making mistakes. Because he'd made such a big one before? I think so. He seemed to approach fatherhood like it was a test. He couldn't afford to fail a second time. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the sounds of evening settling over the neighborhood. Michael, James said finally, I want you to know how grateful I am that you welcomed me into this family. I know it must have been strange, having a stranger show up, claiming to be your nephew. You never felt like a stranger, Michael said honestly. From the moment we met, you felt like family. There's something about the way you carry yourself. The way you think about things. You're definitely John's son. In the good ways, I hope. In the best ways. You got his gentleness and his thoughtfulness. But you also got the courage to pursue what you want instead of running away from it. As the evening wound down and James's friends prepared to leave, Michael realized he felt different about his role in the family. Not just as John's son, but as James's uncle, as someone who could offer perspective and support to the next generation. James, he said as his nephew prepared to leave, I know this might sound presumptuous, but I want you to know that I'm here if you ever need anything. Advice, help, just someone to talk to. I may not have had the chance to be your uncle for the first 30 years. But I'd like to make up for lost time. James clasped Michael's hand warmly. I'd like that too. And Michael, thank you for helping me understand what kind of man my father became. It makes me proud to be his son. Chapter 7. The morning of the wedding. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, with the kind of perfect autumn weather that seemed designed for new beginnings. Catherine stood in her hotel room at 7 in the morning, looking out at the church, where James and Sarah would be married in 8 hours, feeling a mixture of joy and profound gratitude. 55 years ago, she had been a baby, with no conscious memory of her biological father. Today, she would watch her son marry the woman he loved, surrounded by the family she'd never known she'd lost and found again. Her phone rang. Evelyn's name on the caller ID. Good morning, dear. How are you feeling? Like I might cry happy tears all day, Catherine admitted. How are you? The same. I keep thinking about John, about how much he would have loved to see this day. He is seeing it, Catherine said firmly. I feel him everywhere, in James's smile, in the roses we're using for the ceremony, in the family connections that are finally being celebrated instead of hidden. Speaking of roses, I have good news. The cuttings you brought from Norfolk are showing signs of rooting. They might not bloom until next spring, but they're definitely taking hold. Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. That feels like a sign, doesn't it? That some things can survive being transplanted, that new roots can grow even after decades of separation. It feels like hope, Evelyn agreed. Catherine, I wanted you to know how honored I feel to be sharing this day with you. When I married John, I thought I was gaining a husband. I had no idea I was also gaining a daughter and grandson. And I had no idea that learning about my father's second family would feel like coming home instead of losing something. They talked for a few more minutes about the day's schedule. Then Catherine hung up to begin getting ready. She had chosen a dress in deep blue, a color that complemented the wedding party's palette while still feeling special enough for such an important day. As she did her makeup, Catherine thought about the reading she had chosen for the ceremony. After much consideration, she had selected a passage from Anne Morrow. Lindbergh, him that I love, I wish to be free even from me. It seemed perfect for a wedding that was celebrating not just the love between James and Sarah, but the kind of love that had allowed John to set his first family free, so they could find happiness. A knock on her door interrupted her preparations. She opened it to find Anna, radiant in a rose-colored dress that brought out the highlights in her hair. "Aunt Catherine, you look beautiful. Are you ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be." "Are you nervous about your reading?" Anna had volunteered to read from Corinthians, the famous passage about love being patient and kind. "A little. But mostly I'm excited. This feels like the perfect way to celebrate before I leave for New York." "When do you leave?" "Next week. I'll have just enough time to get settled before classes start." Anna's expression grew more serious. "I still can't quite believe I'm doing this. Are you having second thoughts?" "Not about going, but about leaving all of you right when we're becoming a real family." Catherine took Anna's hands. "Sweetheart, we became a real family the moment we chose to love each other. Geography can't change that. If anything, watching you pursue your dreams will make us all prouder to be connected to you." "That's what Dad said too. Your father is a wise man. He understands that love isn't about holding on so tightly that you prevent growth. It's about loving someone enough to support their journey, even when it takes them away from you." They walked to the church together, joining the bustling preparations that always accompanied weddings. Sarah's family had arrived from California, and the church was filled with the controlled chaos of flower arrangements being positioned, musicians tuning their instruments, and ushers receiving their final instructions. Catherine found herself gravitating toward the quiet corners, observing the joy and celebration but also feeling the weight of the moment. This was the wedding her father had dreamed of attending, but never thought he'd be invited to. In his absence, she was representing not just herself but his love for James, his pride in the man his son had become. "Mrs. Hartwell?" A young woman approached with a clipboard and the efficient manner of a wedding coordinator. "I'm Rebecca, the wedding planner. Could I get you to do a quick run-through of your reading?" Catherine followed Rebecca to the front of the church, where she practiced projecting her voice to reach the back pews. As she read the Lindbergh passage aloud, she felt the words settling into her heart. "Him that I love. I wish to be free even from me." It was exactly what John had done for Eleanor and Baby. Catherine loved them enough to set them free, and it was what this family was doing for Anna, loving her enough to support her dreams, even when they led away from home. Chapter 8: The Ceremony. 2 hours before the ceremony, Michael found himself in an unexpected role, helping James with his tie in the church's small preparation room. The groom was calm but focused, checking his appearance one final time before the most important moment of his life. "You clean up pretty well," Michael observed. "Your father would have been proud to see you today." "I hope so," James said, adjusting his cufflinks. "Sarah and I decided to include a moment of remembrance for the family members who can't be here. Her grandfather, our father, your sister Sarah. We wanted them to be part of the celebration somehow." Michael felt a tightness in his throat. "That's perfect. And James? For what it's worth, I'm proud to be your uncle. Proud to be here representing the family that loved you from a distance all these years. Thank you. That means everything to me." A knock on the door interrupted them. 5 minutes, gentlemen," Rebecca called. As they made their way to the front of the church, Michael caught sight of the congregation and felt his breath catch. The pews were filled with people who represented both sides of James's life, friends from college and work, Sarah's extended family from California, and scattered throughout, the Parker family that James was now officially joining. Catherine sat in the front row with Evelyn, and Anna and Michael could see tears already gathering in her eyes. Beside them sat Margaret Daniels, Eleanor's sister, who had driven up to witness this moment of family reconciliation. The processional music began, and Sarah appeared at the back of the church with her father. She looked radiant, but what struck Michael most was the expression on James's face as he watched his bride approach. Pure joy, uncomplicated by doubt or fear. The ceremony itself was beautiful and meaningful, with personal vows that made everyone cry and readings that spoke to the complexity and resilience of love. When Catherine stood to deliver her reading, her voice was strong and clear. "Him that I love, I wish to be free even from me." These words remind us that true love is not possessive but liberating. It doesn't seek to control or constrain, but to support and encourage. Today, James and Sarah, you are choosing not just to love each other, but to love each other. Freely, completely, without reservation or condition. Anna's reading from Corinthians was equally moving, her young voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had learned about love's complexity through her family's recent revelations. During the exchange of rings, the officiant invited a moment of silence for family members who had passed away. We especially remember John David Parker, whose love for his son James was expressed through sacrifice, and whose legacy of devotion lives on in this celebration. Michael felt tears sliding down his cheeks as he thought about his father, about the complicated love that had shaped all their lives, about the joy John would have felt seeing his two families finally united in celebration. When the officiant pronounced James and Sarah husband and wife, the church erupted in cheers and applause. But what Michael would remember most was the moment when James, before kissing his bride, looked directly at Catherine and mouthed the words, "Thank you." Chapter 9, The Reception Revelations. The reception was held at a historic inn just outside Richmond, with gardens that reminded everyone of John's love for growing things. The roses they had incorporated into the ceremony both from Norfolk and from Evelyn's garden were displayed throughout the reception space, creating a visual reminder of how the past and present had been woven together. During cocktail hour, Catherine found herself in conversation with Sarah's parents, explaining the complicated family connections that had brought them all together. "So you're James's biological aunt. But you only met 6 months ago?" Sarah's mother, Linda, was trying to follow the relationships. "That's right. James's biological father was my half-brother, though we were raised in completely different families." "It sounds like a novel," Linda said. "How are you all adjusting to suddenly having an extended family?" Catherine smiled, watching James and Sarah greet their guests with the radiant happiness of newlyweds. "It's been an adjustment, but a wonderful one. We're learning that family isn't just about blood or shared history, it's about choosing to love and support each other." "And the young woman who's leaving for Columbia? Anna? She seems like a remarkable girl." "She is. She's choosing to pursue her dreams while staying connected to her family. It's exactly what her grandfather would have wanted, someone brave enough to grow beyond their origins while still honoring where they came from." As dinner was served, Michael found himself seated at the family table with Catherine, Evelyn, Anna, and Margaret Daniels. The conversation flowed easily, covering everything from James's childhood to Anna's plans for graduate school to Catherine's thoughts about retirement. "I have an announcement," Catherine said as they were finishing their salads. "I've decided to take early retirement at the end of this school year. 35 years of teaching feels like enough." "What will you do?" Anna asked. "I'm thinking of moving closer to all of you. Not to your town necessarily, but somewhere within an hour's drive. I want to be close enough to be a real part of James's life, to watch any future grandchildren grow up, to spend time with the family I found so late in life." Evelyn's face lit up. "Catherine, that would be wonderful. We could have Sunday dinners together, garden together, share all the ordinary moments that make families close." "But what about your life in Richmond? Your friends, your house?" "My house is beautiful, but it's never really felt Like home, Catherine admitted. Too many rooms, too much space for one person. And my friends. Well, the older I get, the more I realize that family matters more than convenience. Anna reached across the table to squeeze Catherine's hand. This is perfect. When I come home from Colombia for visits, you'll be here too. It's like we're all choosing each other again and again. As the evening progressed, they were joined by James and Sarah, who made the rounds of tables to thank their guests personally. When they reached the family table, James pulled up an extra chair. "How are you enjoying your first Parker family wedding?" he asked Anna. "It's perfect, though it's making me emotional about leaving for school." "When do you go?" Sarah asked. "Next week. I'm driving to New York on Tuesday." "That's so exciting," Sarah said. "And kind of terrifying, I imagine." "Very terrifying. But I keep reminding myself that taking risks is what led all of us to this moment. If Grandpa hadn't been brave enough to start over. If Dad hadn't been brave enough to forgive. If Aunt Catherine hadn't been brave enough to meet us, none of this would be happening." James nodded thoughtfully. "Fear almost kept Dad from meeting us too. Mom told me he was terrified that we wouldn't want anything to do with him, that learning about his past would drive us away instead of bringing us together. But it brought us together," Michael said firmly. "And Anna, your leaving for Colombia isn't going to drive us apart either. If anything, it's going to make our time together more precious." As the reception continued, they shared stories and laughter, creating new memories to add to the collection of family moments they were building together. When the DJ played the last dance, Catherine found herself on the dance floor with Michael, both of them thinking about John, and how much he would have loved this celebration. "Do you think he can see this?" Catherine asked as they swayed to the music. "I think he's been seeing it all along," Michael replied. "I think he's been waiting 50 years for this moment, for his families to find each other and choose love over hurt." Chapter 10: New Beginnings. The week following the wedding passed in a blur of preparation for Anna's departure. The family seemed to be making an extra effort to spend time together, as if they could store up enough connection to last through the months of separation ahead. Catherine drove up on Tuesday morning to see Anna off, bringing a care package filled with homemade cookies and a small photo album, documenting the past 6 months of family discoveries. "For when you're homesick," she explained, hugging Anna tightly. "Though I suspect you'll be too busy changing the world to have much time for homesickness." "I'll make time," Anna promised. "And I'll call every week, and I'll be home for Thanksgiving. And I'll probably drive you all crazy with how much I miss you." Evelyn emerged from the house carrying a small wrapped package. "This is from your grandfather's workshop. I found it yesterday when I was organizing his tools." Anna unwrapped it to find a small wooden box, clearly handmade, with "For my granddaughter" carved on the lid. Inside was a note in John's handwriting. "Anna, if you're reading this, you've probably discovered my complicated history. I hope you can understand that every choice I made, good and bad, led me to the privilege of being your grandfather. Follow your dreams, sweetheart. Make your mark on the world. Make us proud. Love always, Grandpa." "He knew," Anna whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He knew I would want to leave, want to explore, want to become something bigger than this town. He knew you had his spirit," Michael said, putting his arm around his daughter. "The courage to start over, to take risks, to build something beautiful from uncertain beginnings." As Anna loaded her car with boxes and suitcases, the family gathered on the front porch for final goodbyes. Catherine pulled her aside for a private moment. "Anna, I want you to know that watching you pursue your dreams has already made me braver. You've inspired me to take early retirement, to move closer to family, to choose love and connection over security and routine." "Really? Really? So when you're in New York and you're missing home, remember that your courage is rippling out. inspiring all of us to be more than we thought we could be. Anna hugged her aunt tightly. I love you, Aunt Catherine. Thank you for showing me that family can grow and change and still remain strong. I love you too, sweetheart. Now go show Columbia what the Parker family produces. As Anna's car disappeared around the corner, Catherine, Michael, and Evelyn stood together on the porch, each processing the bittersweet nature of the moment. She'll be fine, Evelyn said finally. Better than fine. She'll be extraordinary. She already is, Michael agreed. Just like her grandfather would have wanted. Catherine looked at the roses climbing the trellis beside the porch, noting the new buds that were forming even as autumn deepened. Should we go check on those Norfolk cuttings? See how they're taking root? They walked together to the back garden, where the rose cuttings Catherine had brought from her childhood home were showing strong signs of new growth. Small green shoots were emerging from the stems, reaching toward the sun with the determined energy of life that refuses to be constrained by circumstances. They're going to bloom beautifully next spring, Evelyn observed. A perfect symbol of how families can be transplanted and still flourish. And speaking of flourishing, Catherine said, I have news. I put my house in Richmond on the market yesterday. I'm serious about moving closer to all of you. Michael smiled. That's the best news I've heard all week. Apart from James's wedding, of course. Where will you look for a new place? Somewhere with a garden, Catherine said firmly. Somewhere I can plant roses and watch them grow, somewhere I can host Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations, somewhere that feels like home. As they stood together in the garden, John had planted, surrounded by the evidence of love that had survived decades of separation. Catherine felt a deep sense of completion. Her father's story wasn't a tragedy about abandonment and loss, it was a love story about sacrifice and redemption, about families that could survive being broken and become stronger when they were reunited. What do you think he would say if he could see us now? She asked. I think he'd say what he always said about his garden, Evelyn replied. That the most beautiful things grow from the most unlikely ground, and that love, planted with patience and faith, will always find a way to bloom. Epilogue: the letter to Anna. That evening, Catherine sat in her hotel room writing a letter to Anna, who was probably somewhere in Virginia by now, driving toward her new life with the same courage that had allowed John Daniel Morrison to become John David Parker 50 years earlier. Dear Anna, by the time you read this, you'll be settled in New York, beginning your graduate studies, starting the next chapter of your remarkable life. I wanted to write to you while the emotions of this week are still fresh, while I can still feel the echo of your grandfather's presence in all our celebrations. Today I watched you drive away toward your dreams, and I felt nothing but pride and gratitude. Pride in your courage, your intelligence, your determination to use your gifts to help others. Gratitude that I got to witness your launch into the world, that I got to be part of the family that shaped you, and will continue to love you regardless of distance. Your grandfather spent 50 years regretting the family connections he couldn't maintain. But watching you leave today, I realized he got it exactly right with you. He raised a father who would support his daughter's dreams. He influenced a granddaughter who understands that love isn't diminished by distance. He created a family strong enough to let its members fly. Don't worry about us while you're gone. We'll be here when you need us, cheering for your successes, ready to support you through any challenges. And when you come home for visits, you'll find that love hasn't decreased in your absence, it's grown, nourished by pride in what you're accomplishing. Study hard, make friends, change the world, make your grandfather proud by becoming everything he knew you could be. All my love, Aunt Catherine. P.S. The Norfolk roses are taking root beautifully. By the time you come home for Christmas, they'll be well established enough to survive any weather. Just like our family. Catherine sealed the letter and addressed it to Anna's new apartment in New York. Tomorrow she would mail it, along with her hopes and prayers for her niece's success. But tonight, she simply sat by the window looking out at the city, where her son had just married the woman he loved, where her father's two families had finally come together in celebration, where love had proven once again that it could overcome any obstacle if people were brave enough to choose it. John David Parker's unfinished business was finally, truly complete. End of episode 3. What challenges will Anna face in New York? How will Catherine's move affect the family dynamic? And what new secrets might surface as the family continues to explore John's past? Don't miss episode 4, A Fractured Past, coming next week. Subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell to follow the Parker family's journey of growth, love, and new beginnings. Share this episode with someone who believes in the power of family, courage, and following your dreams. How did you feel about Anna's decision to leave for Colombia? What do you think Catherine will discover as she starts her new life? Let us know in the comments below.